A vast alien fleet moved through the dark expanse of space, their ships glowing with the energy of their advanced technology. They had conquered many worlds, crushed many enemies, and believed no force could stand against them. Their sensors detected an unidentified vessel drifting in the void ahead. It was enormous, far larger than any warship they had ever encountered. Curiosity turned to caution as they scanned the ship. No known species had ever built such a massive structure. The ship, silent and still, gave no response to their hails. Its design was unfamiliar, its black armor absorbing all light. The alien commanders exchanged glances, their instincts telling them that something was wrong. The lead warship, adorned with the banners of 1,000 victories, moved closer. Its captain, an experienced warrior, activated the fleet-wide communication. "Unidentified vessel, state your origin and purpose," he commanded. No answer. The silence stretched, increasing the tension. The fleet's generals whispered among themselves. Was it a derelict? A trap? Or something worse? Impatience grew. The alien commander species prided themselves on dominance. No one ignored them. No one refused to respond. "Unidentified vessel," the commander repeated, voice sharp with irritation. "You are in sovereign space. Identify yourself or prepare to be boarded." Still, nothing. The commander's patience snapped. He signaled one of the smaller warships. "Fire a warning shot. Let them know who they are dealing with." The chosen vessel charged its weapons and unleashed a bright energy blast toward the silent ship. The shot traveled swiftly, colliding with the massive warship's dark hull. But nothing happened. The energy vanished, absorbed as if it had never existed. The warship remained unmoved, unaffected, untouched. For the first time, the alien commander felt something unfamiliar. Fear. He barked orders. "Increase scans. Find out what that thing is made of." His officers scrambled, running calculations, analyzing readings. The numbers made no sense. The ship's power levels were unreadable. Its armor registered as an anomaly. Every attempt to understand it failed. And then the ship moved. A deep, low hum vibrated through space as the Titan slowly came to life. Its dark hull pulsed with light, revealing its massive, terrifying form. The alien fleet, once so sure of its strength, felt like insects before a god. A transmission crackled through their systems. A human voice, calm yet commanding, filled the silence. "This is the Titan-Class Warship Galactic, flagship of the Terran Defense Force." The aliens had never heard of humans. They had never encountered anything like this, but something in the captain's voice sent a chill through them. "You fired upon us. That was your mistake." Before the alien commander could respond, alarms blared across the fleet. The Titan's weapons were powering up. And for the first time in their history, the conquerors realized they might have found something they could not defeat. The alien commander's throat tightened as warning lights flashed across his control panel. His fleet, a mighty force feared across the stars, was now in the shadow of something far greater. He had ordered a warning shot, expecting submission. Instead, he had awakened a monster. His officers scrambled to make sense of the readings flooding their screens. The Titan-Class Warship, Galactic, had been idle just moments ago, but now, its energy level surged beyond anything they had encountered. The numbers were impossible. No civilization should have been capable of building something like this. "Commander," an officer stammered, "our weapons had no effect." The energy was absorbed. The commander clenched his fists. "That's not possible. No shield is that strong." The officer swallowed. "It wasn't a shield, sir. The ship itself absorbed the energy." A chill ran through the commander's spine. Before he could respond, the human voice returned, calm and unwavering. "We gave you a chance to leave," the voice said. "You chose violence. Now, you will learn the cost." The fleet's communication channels erupted in frantic chatter. Some captains demanded an immediate retreat, while others insisted on attacking before the unknown ship could make its move. The commander silenced them all with a single word: fire. It was a desperate decision, but hesitation meant death. 100 warships unleashed their firepower at once. Beams of raw energy, torpedoes loaded with enough destructive force to crack planets, and kinetic projectiles designed to tear through capital ships all raced toward Goliath. The combined barrage could have destroyed an armada. And yet, when the firestorm struck, the result was the same as before: nothing. The explosions lit up the void for a brief moment before vanishing. No damage, no impact. The Titan stood, unshaken. The fleet's bravest warriors, the most feared conquerors in the galaxy, were now frozen in horror. Their weapons had done nothing. Then, Goliath finally responded. The massive ship rotated ever so slightly, its dark hull shifting, as if gazing upon the fleet like an indifferent god. And then, the first weapon fired. It wasn't a barrage. It wasn't a wave of destruction. It was one shot. A single beam of blue light lanced forward, silent and swift. It moved with terrifying precision, striking the largest alien warship at its core. For a fraction of a second, nothing happened. Then, reality itself seemed to fracture. The warship didn't explode. It didn't break apart. It vanished, consumed by a force beyond understanding. There was no debris, no wreckage. It was simply gone. Silence gripped the remaining fleet. The commander, who had seen countless battles, who had conquered worlds, now found himself at a complete loss. His most powerful warship had ceased to exist with a single strike. Panic spread through the alien ranks. Some ships attempted to flee, their captains overriding orders in sheer terror. Others held their ground, too stunned to move. Then the human voice spoke again. That was a warning. It was not a threat, not an insult, just a fact. The commander's breath was ragged. He had underestimated these humans. He had thought them weak, insignificant. Now he realized his mistake. This was not just another enemy. This was something else entirely. And now, the galaxy would know fear. The silence that followed was suffocating. Across the alien fleet, stunned officers and crew members sat frozen at their stations, unable to process what had just happened. A single shot, just one, had erased a warship that had once been the pride of their empire. There was no wreckage, no debris, not even a radiation signature left behind. It was as if the ship had never existed at all. The commander gripped the edges of his console, his claws digging into the polished metal. His mind raced through 1,000 possibilities, searching for an explanation. Some form of experimental weapon, a gravitational anomaly, some trick of physics they had not yet discovered. None of it mattered. They were outmatched. Commander, an officer's voice broke through the stunned silence, shaky and uncertain. What are your orders? Orders. He needed to give orders. His fleet was looking to him for leadership. They needed reassurance, direction, something to stop the fear creeping into their minds. Retreat? No, that would mean humiliation. Their empire had never run from a battle. Surrender? Impossible. The thought alone made his stomach turn. And yet, the alternative was worse. Commander, multiple ships are breaking formation. He snapped his attention to the fleet display. Several vessels had begun turning away, their engines burning hot as they attempted to flee. Their captains had made their choice. They would rather face disgrace than death. Cowards. But then, the commander's blood ran cold. The Titan had noticed. The behemoth shifted its position ever so slightly. A soft hum echoed across the battlefield as its weapons powered up again. The energy signature spiked, and then, another shot. The same eerie blue light streaked through the void, connecting with one of the retreating ships. Just like before, it didn't explode, didn't burn, didn't break apart. It simply ceased to be. Another silence. This one deeper, heavier. The alien fleet was no longer thinking about battle. They were no longer considering strategy. They were staring at something beyond their understanding, beyond their worst nightmares. The human voice returned, calm as ever. I suggest you stay where you are." The commander clenched his fists. His soldiers, his warriors, were losing their resolve. He could feel it. Even his most seasoned officers, the ones who had fought alongside him for years, were visibly shaken. He had to do something. He slammed his fist onto the console, his voice breaking through the fear gripping his bridge. "Enough. We are not cowards. We will not fall to fear. This ship, whatever it is still just one ship." The words hit his crew like a lifeline, something familiar in the midst of chaos. He could see the determination flicker back into their eyes. "Yes, their technology is advanced," he continued, his voice rising. "Yes, they are powerful, but they are not invincible. We are an empire. We have ruled the stars for centuries. We will not bow to a species we do not even know." Some of his officers straightened, gripping their consoles a little tighter. "We will adapt," he roared. "We will fight. We will find their weakness. Every enemy has one." He turned to his weapons officer. "Charge the plasma lances. Target that ship's propulsion system. If we cannot destroy it, we will disable it." The officer hesitated for only a moment before obeying. Across the fleet, his words reignited the fire in the warriors' hearts. The remaining warships formed into an attack formation, their weapons locking onto the massive human Titan. Then the human captain's voice came through once more, a single, quiet chuckle. The commander froze. It wasn't a laugh of arrogance. It wasn't mocking. It was something else, something far more terrifying. It was amusement. "You still don't understand," the human said, his voice almost disappointed. The Goliath began to move. For the first time, it advanced. The alien fleet, which had once surrounded it, now felt small in its presence. The Titan glided forward with an eerie grace, its engines burning brighter. Then, the ship did something unexpected. It vanished. No hyperspace jump. No portal. It simply blinked out of existence. One moment it was there. The next it was gone. Confusion spread through the alien fleet. "Where did it go?" someone shouted. The commander's eyes darted across his displays, his heart pounding. The sensors were empty. No trace of the ship, no energy signature. It was like it had never been there. But then, a deep alarm blared through the warship. New readings, behind them. The Goliath reappeared in an instant, directly inside their formation. Impossible. No ship that size should have been able to move that fast. No known technology could allow for such precise repositioning. The alien fleet was in chaos now, scrambling to turn and react. But they were already too late. The Titan's weapons came to life. This time, it did not fire a single shot. This time, it unleashed hell. Panic. It spread like wildfire through the alien fleet. Officers screamed orders. Pilots scrambled to maneuver. Defense systems activated, but deep inside, they all knew the truth. They had never been in control of this battle. They had been allowed to exist, to stand before this war machine as if they had a chance. But now, their time had run out. The Goliath loomed in the center of their fleet, a predator among prey. It had moved in a way that defied every law of physics they understood. One moment it was distant. The next it was in their midst. No hyperspace signature. No distortion field. It had simply appeared. And now, it struck. The first attack was unlike anything ever witnessed in warfare. Energy waves, invisible to the naked eye but devastating in effect, rippled outward from the Titan's hull. The closest alien warships were hit instantly. Their shields, their armor, none of it mattered. The ships began to disintegrate, their very molecules breaking apart, dissolving into nothing. There was no explosion, no debris, no survivors. A wave of silence followed the destruction. It was the sound of warriors losing all hope. Shields, full power to shields. The commander's voice was raw with desperation. He refused to believe what his eyes were showing him. He refused to accept that they were helpless. All ships target the enemy and fire at will. The remaining warships obeyed. Plasma lances, antimatter torpedoes, railgun slugs the size of buildings, all fired at once. Hundreds of projectiles and energy beams raced toward the Goliath from every direction. A direct hit was impossible to avoid. If it could be damaged, this would be the moment. But as the impacts landed, something horrifying happened. The Goliath absorbed everything. The energy attacks were swallowed whole. The kinetic projectiles shattered against its hull like brittle glass. It stood unscathed, untouched, unbothered. The alien commander felt his blood turn to ice. "That's not a ship," an officer whispered, his voice barely audible. "It's a force of nature." Then the retaliation began. The Titan did not fire traditional weapons. It rewrote the battlefield. Space itself shifted. The enemy ships found themselves moving without control. Their navigational systems twisted against them. Some vessels began spinning wildly, while others were suddenly frozen in place, trapped in invisible fields of force. It was as if gravity itself had been turned into a weapon. A destroyer attempted to escape, only to be dragged backward at impossible speeds. It slammed into one of its own battleships, the impact so great that both vessels shattered like fragile ornaments. More warships suffered the same fate. Some were pulled into sudden collisions. Others were ripped apart by forces that should not exist. The Goliath was not just winning. It was demonstrating absolute power. The alien commander watched his fleet collapse before his eyes. His people, warriors of a proud empire, were being erased from existence like they were nothing. His hands trembled. "Open a channel to the human vessel." An officer hesitated. "Sir, now." A moment later, the human's voice returned. Calm, emotionless, unshaken. "Go ahead." The commander's throat was dry. He had never spoken to a human before. He had never thought they were worth his attention. Now, they were the only thing that mattered. He swallowed his pride. We wish to negotiate." Silence. Then the human captain responded with words that sent a chill through the entire fleet. "I believe you misunderstand." The commander's breath caught in his throat. "This is not a negotiation." The Goliath's weapons charged again, and the purge continued. The entire galaxy was watching. Every empire, every species, every civilization capable of receiving interstellar broadcasts had turned their attention to the battle unfolding in deep space. Their screens displayed the destruction of what was once considered an unstoppable fleet, an armada feared across the stars. And yet, against this single human warship, they were not warriors. They were not conquerors. They were nothing. The Goliath did not fight a war. It ended it. Alien leaders sat frozen in their high palaces, their advisors whispering frantic theories in their ears. Military strategists tried to make sense of what they were seeing, but there was no logic to it. No known technology could do this. Scientists across the stars replayed the footage again and again, searching for an explanation. They found none. On the battlefield, the alien commander stared at his failing fleet, his mind unable to comprehend the sheer scale of their defeat. His warships were dying faster than he could give orders. Weapons meant to destroy entire planets had done nothing. Ships that had survived centuries of war were now reduced to flickering wreckage, their remains drifting lifelessly through the void. The Goliath was not simply destroying them. It was demonstrating what it meant to defy humanity. Another ship was torn apart by unseen forces. Another was crushed into a singularity, folded into itself like a piece of paper. A battlecruiser, one of the largest warships in the fleet, imploded without a sound. The fleet was no longer a fleet. It was a graveyard. The alien commander could barely hear the terrified voices of his officers anymore. The screams, the desperate calls for orders, for salvation, none of it mattered now. And then the human captain spoke again. "This is the fate of those who challenge us." The words echoed across every surviving ship, broadcasted to every species watching. The weight of them pressed down upon the galaxy like a force of nature. The alien commander sank into his chair, his body numb. His empire had sent him here to prove its strength. They had believed themselves invincible. They had been wrong. He forced himself to speak. "Please." His voice was weak. "We surrender." The silence that followed was suffocating. Then the Goliath responded. Too late. A final shot fired. And the last of the fleet was no more. Across the galaxy, rulers and warlords sat in stunned horror. An entire battle group, erased. A warship beyond understanding had revealed itself. And now, everyone had the same terrifying question in their minds. Was this a warning? Or was it only the beginning? The battle was over. Or rather, it had never truly been a battle at all. The alien fleet, once a symbol of power and dominance, had been eradicated. The space where their warships once stood was now a void filled with silent debris and flickering emergency beacons. Ships that had ruled the stars for centuries had been reduced to mere echoes of their existence. And at the center of it all, the Titan remained. The Goliath was untouched, hovering in the wreckage like a god surveying its work. Across the galaxy, countless species had watched as it wiped an entire armada from existence. Billions of beings across thousands of worlds held their breath. Because if this warship was just one of many, then humanity had just rewritten the balance of power in the universe. The few remaining escape pods from the destroyed fleet drifted aimlessly, their occupants too stunned to move. Some survivors trembled in silence, their minds broken by the impossibility of what they had witnessed. Others clutched their comm systems, whispering prayers to gods that had failed them. But no one dared to speak. And then, the human captain's voice rang out once more. "We are done here." The words cut through the silence, simple yet absolute. It was not a declaration of victory. It was a statement of fact. The Goliath began to move again. Its engines flared, and for the first time, it seemed to acknowledge the eyes of the universe upon it. It had made its statement. It had shown what humanity was capable of. Now it was leaving. A ripple spread through the wreckage as the massive warship turned, preparing for departure. But before it vanished into the void, it sent out one final message. A warning to every empire watching, to every species that had ever considered humanity a minor player in the grand scheme of the galaxy. The message was simple, but its meaning was clear. Do not test us again. And then, without a trace, the Titan disappeared. It left behind nothing but silence and the haunting memory of what had just happened. Across the galaxy, rulers and warlords gathered in secret meetings. Fleets were recalled. Strategies were rewritten. The great powers of the universe, who had once seen humanity as insignificant, now realized they had been blind. There were no celebrations, no declarations of war, only fear. Because the greatest question of all still remained unanswered. If this was only one ship, what else was humanity hiding? The galaxy had changed. What was once a stage for mighty empires, endless conflicts, and ambitious warlords had been shaken to its core. The destruction of an entire fleet, one of the most feared armadas in known space, was not just an event. It was a message. The broadcast of the battle had reached far beyond the battlefield. Across thousands of systems, from the dens of smugglers to the halls of emperors, every species had witnessed it. They had all seen the power of a Titan-Class Warship. They had all heard the final warning from the humans. Do not test us again. The words lingered in the minds of every leader, every strategist, every scientist who had once thought they understood the balance of power. But the balance had shifted, and no one knew what to do next. The gathering of the Galactic Council. On the ancient world of Velrax, a gathering of the most powerful species in the galaxy had been called. The Galactic Council, once a place of endless debates and political maneuvering, was now silent. For the first time in history, there were no arguments. Only fear. A towering reptilian warlord, Supreme Overlord Craxus, slammed his fist onto the table, his sharp claws digging into the surface. We cannot ignore this. Humanity was insignificant only decades ago. Now, they wield a power that should not exist. A multi-eyed diplomat from the Orvan Syndicate let out a slow breath. Their technology is beyond us. If they have one warship like this, they could have hundreds. If we provoke them. We have already provoked them, interrupted a deep rumbling voice. It came from the oldest being in the room, High Chancellor Vorix of the Celari Dominion. His species had survived for millennia, outlasting dozens of civilizations. But now, even he looked troubled. The fleet that was lost was not small, he continued. It was one of the greatest armadas assembled in generations, and yet, against a single ship, it did not last an hour. The council chamber fell into another uneasy silence. No one wanted to say what they were all thinking. If one Titan-Class Warship could do this, what else had humanity built? The answer terrified them. Humanity's silence. As the days passed, the galaxy expected retaliation from the humans. Surely, they would press their advantage, demand surrender, or seize new territory. After all, that was what any other species would do after displaying such dominance. But humanity did nothing. No threats, no demands, no further attacks. The humans simply returned to their own territory, as if nothing had happened. The Goliath disappeared from known space, its whereabouts unknown. This silence was even worse than war, because now every empire was left to wonder. Was humanity merciful, or were they simply waiting? The changing of empires. One by one, galactic powers began making changes. Policies that had once restricted humans were quietly lifted. Trade agreements were suddenly offered. Military fleets that had once patrolled human borders mysteriously withdrew. No one wanted to risk another Goliath. And yet the most dangerous thing was not humanity's warships. It was the unknown. No spies had ever returned with information about the Titan-class fleet. No intercepted transmissions revealed the full extent of humanity's technology. Their military records were locked behind security that no hacker could breach. Every civilization that had once dismissed humanity as weak now faced a terrifying truth. They had no idea what the humans were truly capable of. The final decision. On Velarax, after weeks of discussion, the Galactic Council reached a decision. There would be no retaliation, no war. Instead, humanity would be watched from a distance. All species, no matter their past grudges, agreed on one thing. No one would risk angering the humans ever again. And so, the war that could have reshaped the galaxy ended before it even began. Not with a treaty, not with a surrender, but with silence. Humanity had not conquered anyone. They had not needed to. They had already won.